Hi guys, welcome to the Mrs. Club Corner, a corner where we're gonna be tackling everything love, relationships, marriage, parenting, family, and a little bit of career. All those aspects anchored in faith. So in today's episode, welcome. If it's your first time on this corner, welcome and thank you for clicking on the video and taking your time to actually view what the Mrs. Club Corner is all about. Before we get into today's episode, we are shooting at Mopandi Studios in Midrand. All their details will be in the description down below, so please make sure that you contact them and make your memories beautiful and memorable. So yeah, let's move on to today's episode. Today's episode is very personal. So, but I'm not gonna make the video too personal about myself. But yeah, it's something that I have experienced personally, and most South Africans are experiencing and continue to experience unemployment. But because the Mrs. Club Corner, we mostly talk about things that are happening in marriages. So it's unemployment in marriages. That's the topic that we're going to be talking about today. So that I will be talking about today. So guys, unemployment is now a pandemic in our country. It's actually very sad. It's a very high rate. We all know that the unemployment rate is very high in our country, and it's really sad. And being unemployed and married, a bad combination, a very bad combination. So I know that unemployment can actually break marriages. So especially if it's the husband that's not working, if it's the husband that's unemployed and is not able to provide for his family, not able to provide for his children. Most of the time, it's not in all families, it's not in all cases where marriages do break, where families do break due to unemployment. But unemployment does affect most marriages negatively, in a negative way. So I remember when I after graduating with my first with my second degree, so I was so excited. I had a bursary and I was excited that I will be employed as soon as I completed my medical degree, right? Unfortunately for me, that was not the case. So I then immediately had to. Most of my colleagues, or my classmates rather, at that time, most of them had bursaries, and some were fortunate enough, from different provinces, were fortunate enough to be employed. And some of us, and most of us, became unemployed and were released from our bursaries, and were told that you can go job hunting for yourself. Unfortunately, due to budget stuff, all those, I don't want to get into too much details. But yeah, after being released from the bursary and now having to face unemployment and having to start job hunting, seeking for a job in the health sectors, it was not an easy journey. It's still not an easy journey. Job hunting is not an easy journey in any career. It's not an easy thing, and it was so challenging. I remember I was so sad. I almost fell into depression because I was, from being so excited to being, the bubble being bursted the way it was bursted, that, unfortunately we cannot give you, the appointment letter in that hospital that I was supposed to be working in. My bubble just burst. I felt my world, my career crumbling. I felt so down, and that's when I realized that I am forming part of the unemployment stats, and it's not a nice reality. It's not a very nice reality. But quickly I had to remember, who am I? I had to remember that, I am a child of God. I had to remember who I am, as a child of God, who created me. And I had to pick up my faith and start looking at my Father. As always, in every situation I look at God. In every situation I cry to God. So even during that time of unemployment, even during that time of, not knowing what's going to happen, where am I going to even start looking for a job? I'm a newly graduate. I'm new from graduating. I have no CV. Hey, guys. I have no CV. I don't know how to create a CV for myself. I have no references. I'm just a new graduate. It was so painful. It was a painful journey for me. But looking at God, God is our Jehovah Jireh, the Lord, our provider, and I looked at Him and I knew that His plans for us are always to prosper us, and I was also grateful for my husband. I was already married in my second degree. When I was getting my second degree, I was already married. So my husband was there with me as the head of our household. I was fortunate that he was able to provide for me. Even during me studying, he was able to hold things together for us. He was able to provide for me. I had already we already had our son, so we're having one child at that time, our son, Kumo. So it was challenging, but not too much financially, because not much had changed at that time. But I had high hopes as a new graduate that now our household, things are gonna be better. Our household, there'll be 2 salaries, and it's things are gonna be better with two salaries in the house, and as they should. Because why? We are children of God, and we are created to prosper. We conquer, we are more than conquerors, and highly favored, fearfully and wonderfully made. So my hopes were very high as reality slapped me in the face, and I quickly had to have plan B and start learning about CVs, start looking for jobs in different health sectors, and it was not an easy journey. Even for my marriage, it was so challenging, because I remember before, when I was still a student, my husband and I would not even fight about money. We would not fight about finances, because he was the one who was taking care of everything. He was the employed one. Now I'm no longer a student. I'm no longer studying. I am supposed to be having a job, and reality now kicks in to say, hey, you are supposed to also be providing, and that reality, you get into silly fights, you get into, silly arguments whereas before they were not there, but because of unemployment, now everything revolves around finances. Even though I was getting, wife allowance, but suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. The atmosphere shifts from you being a student to now having to be an adult and start providing and start helping out with financial decisions, financial things that need finances, financial responsibilities. You need to share that with your husband, and it was not an easy journey, because it breaks you first, then slowly starts to break your marriage, because as a person sitting unemployed, you start to feel that sense, you start to get that sense of hopelessness. You start to you don't have hope. You feel hopeless, you feel useless, you feel helpless, you feel less than, you feel inadequate, even to your partner, even to just talk about things that should be bought in the house, talk about the things that you need as a person. It becomes such a heavy thing to do, because then you have lost that confidence to talk about finances or even contribute anything, even if it's an opinion. When it comes to finances, you are not contributing anything, even if it's an opinion. An opinion is the cheapest thing that anyone can afford. So when you are unemployed and married, you start to feel like even your opinion, it really doesn't matter. And it's very sad, because then you drift from your partner, that emotional intimacy gets affected, the intellectual intimacy gets affected, negatively, because you feel like, you can't really have any conversation, any meaningful conversation with your partner, due to you feeling less than, you feeling hopeless, you feeling inadequate financially. So that's how unemployment affects marriages. So you slowly just drift apart because of that. But it's not always the case. Some marriages thrive with women being housewives, and these days there are also house husbands. Yes, so there are a lot of those women, Proverbs 31 women, that carry their households financially, that carry their husbands and children financially, and that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I honestly don't see anything wrong with women who are able to do that, because then that's what the Proverbs 31 woman was all about her household, taking care of the kids, taking care of the finances, taking care of her husband. And it's there in the Bible, right? And speaking of the Bible, I have a scripture that in Genesis, I would like to read in Genesis 3 verse 17. This is where God was giving instructions to the man and the woman after eating the forbidden fruit. So this was sort of a punishment to both of them, right? To the three: the snake, the man, and the woman, right? And yeah, let's just read about it. Genesis 3 verse 17, it reads as follows: and to the man he said, this is what God said to the man: since you listened to your wife and ate from the tree whose fruit I commanded you not to eat, the ground is cursed because of you. All your life you will struggle to scratch a living from it. I will grow thorns and thistles for you, though you will eat of its grains. By the sweat of your brow will you have food to eat, until you return to the ground from which you were made. So this is what God was saying to Adam. Basically, he was saying you are going to work hard to provide for your family. It's the punishment upon a man, that you have to work hard. You're going to sweat. The ground will be hard for you. You know that you have to cultivate the soil before you plant anything. You have to cultivate the soil, care for it, make sure that it's going to be a fertile soil where when you put your seeds in, things are just going to grow nicely. But now here God is punishing Adam to say, providing is not going to be an easy thing for you. You are going to provide, but you have to work hard. You have to sweat to provide for your family. So, and most men don't get married because of their financial status, or financially they are not ready. most of them, they will want to secure the bag. They talk about, I need to have enough money to be able to provide for my family. I need to be I need to secure the bag before I can get married, so that I'll be able to provide for my family, which is fair, which is good, because then that's what God put on the man. That's the responsibility that God put on the man, to say, you are going to work hard. So your wife can work harder than you, right? Your wife can work harder than you, even though, I'm a hard worker, I'm a hard-working woman, but my husband works even harder. You get. So the Proverbs 31 woman, which is also mentioned, is spoken about in the Bible, where the scripture that says, he that finds a wife finds a good thing. That good thing that they are talking about, it's the Proverbs 31 wife. A woman who will be able to push you to work even harder, because she is already a hard worker. She is already working hard as a woman. So that suitable helper that God says, I will create a suitable helper for you. That suitable helper is created for you to work harder than her. The suitable worker that they're talking about is that woman that's in Proverbs 31. To push you. She's working hard. Yes, she's doing everything for her household. She's doing the most. But also, you as a husband, you ought to be pushed to work harder. Because why? The ground is hard for you to actually grow food. So think of, for example, a farmer. It's hard to be a farmer, because everything that you do, it works in season. The things that are planted in the farm, they are seasonal. There are seasonal fruits, there are seasonal vegetables. In every season, you have to know, what are you cultivating? What are you growing as a husband? You have to put in extra effort in every season. Whether you are planting or harvesting, you have to put in a different type of, hardship, working hard to provide for your family. That's the responsibility that as a man you were given, right? So, but because, of the economy, because of the country that we are living in, unfortunately, it's even harder for men to get employment. It's even harder for them to make as much money as before. Before, our grandmothers were just relaxing at home, raising kids, working hard to raise children in their homes. But now, both women and men are in the employment pool. They're in the employment circle, which makes the pie even smaller for all of us, which makes the circle more crowded. So it makes it even harder for the man to stay in that cycle or that circle of employment. So so as I was saying, that God has put that responsibility on the man to work harder in order for him to be able to provide. I have my own little notes. Please excuse me when I am busy looking and seeing what's so. But the Bible comes again to say 2 is better than 1, right? In Ecclesiastes 4 verse 9 to 10, it talks about 2 people are better off than 1, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help, but someone who falls alone is in real trouble. So unemployment in marriages doesn't really have to break the marriage, because 2 is better than 1, as the Bible is saying that when one falls, the other one is there to pick up or help the other one. And it's not just the man who's the one who has to pick up the wife. Even the wife is there to pick up the husband during his struggling time of getting employment or securing the bag. As a suitable helper, you are also created to help your husband build wealth, secure the bag. I know that most women will be like, I'm not Bob the Builder. No, it's not about being Bob the Builder. It's about being a suitable helper for your partner. You are not just there to gain and gain and gain. You are also there to help each other. As it says in the scripture, 2 is better than 1. When one falls, the other one is there to pick up the luggage, to pick up the other. And that's teamwork. That's teamwork that we all need in our marriages. We all need that, shoulder to help you carry your load. So that's my little piece when it comes to unemployment in marriages, that it doesn't really have to break your home. It doesn't really have to break your marriage. It's all about helping one another. As the scripture says, it's all about teamwork. It's all about, doing what the scripture is saying. Thank you for watching today's episode. If you can relate, please share with your friends and families. Please like. Thank you so much. I will see you next time in the next episode. Bye.